a record of the delightful piece they're going to play this evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, 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 your attention, please. Your attention, please.
Hey everyone, I'm your host here at Requiem RadioA, Solo Requiem, and I have my co-host here, Hazy Dialect. Hazy, you there, man?
Yeah,
So
I
awesome.
am Hazy Dialects. Hey everybody, Solo Requiem. Nice to see you again. And your favorite, Schizo Essay is here to chop it up and discuss various topics with my co-host here.
Hell yeah, and let's not forget our first featured guest on Season 1, Episode 2, the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend, the absolute GOAT himself. We got our boy Slater in the chat. Slater, what's up, man?
What's up, brother? How you doing, man? Good to listen. I'm honored and privileged to be here, man. So, thanks for having me come up.
Hey, man, a privilege of mine. I'm glad that you're on our stage with us, man. And hey, like I said, good to see you. Thanks for being our first guest too.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
Would you mind giving like a quick intro about yourself to some people listening in? First time hearing about you.
All right, man. So Slater, born in Brooklyn, New York. I moved out to Jersey when I was 13 years old. I've been here ever since. I'm a teacher's aide by trade. I'm a musician at night, and I love hip hop music. I love helping people. We're gonna get into all of that. I'm a big sports head. I just want to leave the world better than the way I found it, man. You know, so that's where I'm at right now.
Good shit.
Absolutely.
Where can they find you, Slater?
Say that again.
Where can they find you for all the things they want to find, such as like your podcast, your music? Where would they go to?
Okay, so for my music, it's Mr. Slater Beats. I'm trying to get all that stuff put together right now. I got an album out off my new my latest album was actually a year old, which will be in a couple of weeks. The Deep State album, it's really dope. It's called The Lead by Example. I did all the beats on that album, so if you guys want to check that out, it's Deep State Lead by Example. And if you like raw hip hop, man, from like that 90s era, that 90s early 2000s era, that's what it is, man. And also I got a podcast called We Have Opinions, where it's just me and my co-host Chance Legend, and we talk about today's issues, and we try to make jokes out of it, man, and things that bother young men, anybody from today's era, we just try to throw popcorn at the screen, man, so I do a little bit of everything, but music is my first love, and I'm trying to get that off the ground right now.
For anyone new to your podcast, what episode would you think is the best one to broach to like get a really good understanding of like your podcast and what you guys do?
If you want to get to it's funny you bring that up. If you want to get to know me as a person and like my dating habits, I think it would be me. There's an episode where we talk about who dates single moms. I forget I know it's season 1, but I forget what episode it is, where I talk about how dating single moms is the greatest thing in the world. I don't know. It's just I remember in the beginning of the podcast we talked about my mother and her fish tank, and how her fish died, and I said a little prayer about it, because that's all she talks about. She doesn't talk about any of my accomplishments or anything that happens with me. It's mostly just about like her fish and my little brother. So we started with that, and then we went into single moms. So like I said, we poke fun at a lot of things, everything from dating single moms to what the rent would be like if you lived in Gotham City, and to all type of stuff. We throw opinions at it. Some of it's serious, some of it is not too serious. So it's fun, man.
All right, nice. Thank you for the introduction. And most of us have been listening to hip hop for quite some time. Hip hop is finally reaching like the 50s in terms of its like cultural zeitgeist and like the consciousness and people being aware of it. And it's been sonically a part of the landscape for quite some time. As a chameleon to some degree, since it's not something that has I would call one unifying sound. In fact, a lot of places have different sounds like the ATL or like the boom bap sound of like New York and all that. When it comes to like hip hop, and the question I would like to like pose to everyone, what do you think is like the most impactful element of hip hop?
There's a different. The older I get, I just celebrated my birthday not that long ago. The older I get, I feel like there's every part of hip hop is impactful. It just depends on what level of the spectrum you stand on. If you ask me, I'm a boom bap head. That's the music I grew up on. That's the music I make. That's the music that draws me to real lyricism, real poetry, real understanding of who I am as a person and where I grew up. You know what I mean? It hip hop has taught me to love everybody, but to not trust the system. To look around and enjoy where you are, but always question the next step of your life. And that's where I am. Being a man that has a disability himself, hip hop has also taught me that, growing up with a disability, just because you have a limitation doesn't mean you are the limitation. You can be better than the limitation, if that makes sense.
If you mind me asking, what's it called? Are you familiar if Aerosmith Walk This Way by any chance?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was watching this cool interview where they're discussing the same question that Hazy asked, and they were talking about how that song came out around 75, and during that time period, like, there was a lot of stigma built up between, rap music, country music, all the things like that, basically being like, if you're in this certain group, your people listen to this. So if you're white, you listen to country. If you're black, you listen to rap. And then here comes Aerosmith doing a thing with Run DMC, where he says, actually, we could do a cool collab together. And that song ended up breaking 100 Billboard, I believe, and just being hella influential and crossing a big gate guard, if you will, where it took down the gatekeeping where certain people listen to certain things. And it was one of those songs that's like, oh, cool. This has both rock and rap in it, basically.
We come in, not to cut you off on that, because I know where you're going with that, and that's you're cooking. I think the thing about we as humans are flawed, right? Yeah. So the first thing we look at is our differences before anything else. And the first thing that happens when you have these conversations is it's like, oh, well, we go into our tribal modes, because you look at hip hop, you look at rock, all of these things are black influentials, right? So it's like, you got Run DMC, you have like you said, you have Aerosmith, you have all these guys, and it's music, man. It's music. That's what it is. It's supposed to bring people together. So when you have these guys making influential stuff, it's the pinnacle of what hip hop is. You know what I mean? Hip hop is a, and you don't even have to be a fan of Aerosmith. You don't have to be a fan of Run DMC. You just have to be a fan of good music that's gonna, that makes you feel something. That's what life is about. It's supposed to make you feel stuff. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you don't, I don't have to like Miley Cyrus, but I know there's certain songs that'll make, if I listen to it long enough, it'll make me feel something. You know what I mean? Music is supposed to make you feel something, whether negative or positive. And
hey, shout out to Katy Perry. That's my girl right there. Fireworks.
That's how you know, that's how you know when music means something to you. I used to be like that though, Sola. I used to be that guy that was just like, all right, I'm only listening to this. I'm only listening to hip hop. I'm only fucking with this. But nah, it's, there's artists where I'm like, man, I need my Boyz II Men. I need my Katy Perry's. I need my Garth Brooks's, depending on where I'm at or what I'm doing that day or whatever. I got done listening to Neo about an hour ago. So you know what I mean? Nice. You have to, it's where you are in your spectrum of the game. You know what I mean? And that's how I make my music. That's how I make my productions. You know what I mean? Hip hop is always gonna be my first love, but you're more of a well-rounded person if you listen to other genres of music, because this is where where your music can go. You know what I mean? Yeah. This is where you can push your limits.
I think people underplay how much influences definitely do inspire or like produce a level of creativity that you never could have imagined prior to it. Um, if you listen to a lot of earlier Travis Scott music, you notice they heavier influences of like Kanye West and Kid Cudi. While now his sound is like almost unidentifiable in that regard. Songs like "Pissing Your Grave" from Rodeo still gives you a strong inflection of Kanye West's cadence and like personality, bravado. But all this to say that I think people really shouldn't be all that concerned about whether or not your influences leak out of what you create, because eventually you're going to see what you can do to creatively push that idea and concept as you would reiterate it. In fact, I would say that creativity to some degree is a different iteration of like how you would personally express that idea or concept. So
that makes a lot of sense. We have to, and we also have to stop. We also have to stop saying, you know, this is old or that is old. It's just music. You know what I mean? Like hip hop too is especially like I've had this conversation with a lot of hip hop fans my age, right? Where it's like hip hop is the only genre where you disrespect the people who came before you. Like I'm dying to meet Eric Sermon one day. I'm dying to meet Busta Rhymes one day, right? Like those are two of my hip hop heavyweights to me, right? You know, but if I were to bring that to one of my to my students, like they wouldn't know who Busta Rhymes is. They wouldn't know who Eric Sermon is, because to them they're old, they're outdated, they're not what they listen to.
You're making me feel old later. This guy,
no,
come
for
on.
Real.
Really?
Like, for real. Like I work with middle school kids, and if I brought Busta Rhymes to my middle school, like, you know, it's not only a genre thing, it's more of a cultural thing with Black people too. Like certain things for people, it's just old. You know what I mean? And I think, but when you listen to country music, man, or you listen to like Garth Brooks, you listen to Florida Georgia Line, like you got young white kids listening to that. Doesn't matter how old they are. You know what I mean? Like, and there's a different disparity there. Like, you know what I mean? Certain kids are just like, this is old. Unless you've grew up in that household where Nas was being played or Jay-Z was being played in the late 90s going into the 2000s, like, or your parents was teaching you about that, you didn't really get that, as opposed to other ethnicity groups or other genres of music where stuff was being thrown around the house. Like, you appreciate it a little bit more. We have to teach our kids to appreciate all genres of music and leave the gatekeeping out.
I think it's interesting that you bring that up in terms of the discussion of generational respect for prior existed. I think to some degree there is that within the Black community. However, I think that's due to the adversity of some of the environments that some people find themselves in, whether that be the harshness of some New York areas or just the downtrodden natures
100%.
of some areas within Philadelphia, naturally necessitating some independence to be invoked into the individual.
100%.
And so
100%.
it's harder to be behest at this when there's a lack of that sort of like inherent community in nature with some of those communities in which, yeah, there is the era that came prior to this, but it's harder to behoove yourself or be malleable to reasoning when at the same time in some communities it's a more of a lone wolf mentality in some regards. So
of course,
to be like, I should respect this when what I'm supposed to respect has provided me very little in some regards. So
yeah, no, 100%. It's hard to have a generational conversation about music with younger people sometimes, because certain people don't have the pulse of the younger generation. Just like younger people aren't expected to have the pulse of older people. We have to meet in the middle. We have to meet in a place where people can understand where people can come from and have those conversations.
Do you believe in like an objective musical, like, yeah, this music's objectively better than others? So an example, if you were to play like, I don't know, Wu-Tang Clan or Nas basically, and then you have younger generations like playing Lil Pump and stuff like that, I don't want to say or compromise and be like, okay, Lil Pump, that's just their generation, is as good as Nas was. Because like we all know, even if you're an old head, you know like Nas or like Wu-Tang is not. That's like a different entire ball league. You know what I mean? You got mumble rap,
but
you got
I
poetry.
I can't argue with younger people about how they feel about their music because it's theirs. I can't take that from them. You know what I'm saying? Just like older people. Like I can't take Earth, Wind, and Fire away from my dad and my stepdad. You know what I'm saying? It's music. Music is a time capsule that holds the test of time. You just weren't in that time period. That's all. Unless you want to go back in time and take that time out, just like now. So right, more people in this generation are going out and getting vinyl records. Vinyls are on the rise because people want to learn about this stuff. People want to take the time out to understand what it's like to hear that crackling sound on top of the music. You know what I mean? And to hear the beautifulness of surround sound crackles. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Like
no, 100% does. My mother.
It's all about how you interpret your music. Now, yeah, like I'm not the biggest fan of a Little Pump or any of that type of stuff, but that's theirs. Now, if you were to ask me these questions like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I'd probably be like, yeah, fuck these young kids. Blah, blah, blah. But again, all of that comes with experience and knowledge of self and knowing that, you know, even in the Little Pump age with these kids now, like wait till they get older. It's gonna be the same thing when another young rapper comes out and it's gonna be some shit that they can't understand. It's gonna be the same thing. It's just a revolving circle. But the fact is that it holds its own test of time. Some stuff holds out longer than most. You know what I mean? Just like certain TV shows are like, even if they reboot it, you're like, yo, this was never like the original. Like the original was way better than this.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies of all time is RoboCop, the first RoboCop, the one that came out in like 85, 86 or 80 or whatever. It pales in comparison. The first 20 minutes of the movie pales in comparison to the entire movie that came out in 2010. But that's, I mean, does that take away from the second movie? No, it's just a different movie in a different time period. You know what I mean? With today's standards on top.
I thought it was interesting. Two things I'd like to bring up. I do believe that there was a time period where a lot of movies were being recreated and for a modern generation, and I don't think that RoboCop as a movie gets enough respect, at least the most modern iteration of that movie. But I also want to add on to the point.
First one or the second one?
First one.
Yeah, the first one is obviously like a legacy, but I believe that some movies creatively plateaued to some degree, whereas the biting commentary about Detroit and the pervasive nature of like what was happening around there, politically speaking, is not the biggest part of like RoboCop 2 and 3. Like they become more grandiose in nature in terms of the action and the conflict, but in terms of like the parallels in which they drew the commentary from aren't as substantive.
Absolutely.
They watered down the message with the newer RoboCop 2. It's like the OG RoboCop. That shit was about, you know, a guy who was like has a suit, and you have these big corporation people being like, yeah, you know, target these certain groups of people. You need to take them out there to thugs and criminals. Only for him to later figure out, like, oh, the actual criminals are these like big corporation guys. These head of these corporations, they're corrupt.
Authoritarianism and all that.
And they took that shit out of the 2010 movie. They watered down the message and they made it like some personal life thing. And I'm like, why? That's not what RoboCop is.
They tried to do both of those things at once. Because if you remember in the first one, it took him a while to realize that he was really a person, right? Even in the second one, when they had the birthday party for him, they brought him home, and he couldn't really figure out what was going on. It's the same thing, but they, like you said, they watered it down. They didn't make it as real as it was supposed to be. Meaning, like in like the first part, the first 20 minutes of the first RoboCop was like those dudes were ruthless. Like you couldn't have this guy standing in front of five criminals getting shot at execution style. They shot through his Kevlar and then reloaded. You couldn't have that now. You know what I'm saying? You couldn't even recreate that without people freaking out about it. So like, that's the other part about it too. The times have changed, as opposed to the second one where like a car explodes and then he turns into RoboCop. You know what I mean? It's the way we look at the world now. It's the way the world is reacting to certain things.
I do think that the remake did have some positive moments within it.
It had good graphics. I'll give it that. It had really good graphics.
The movie was dope.
In terms of there's an interesting scene within it where he discusses how 80,000 volts is going to like shock this man and basically cardiac arrest and all that. But it's just kind of the commonality of what could occur when you're using a taser, and it's a very fascinating moment of like two people who are uninformed about how a taser works. This might sound cold-hearted, but what he's really doing in that moment of time is just reading off like the commonplace harm that could come from a taser.
You mean the first one or the second one?
No, I was speaking towards the remake and how I think.
Oh, the remake.
The pros of the remake, yeah.
I do think that the remake had some good moments within it, but I was going to point out, and to the point earlier, that was a question that was asked earlier about objectivity in terms of music. I think objectivity in music goes as far as the replication or learning to like play like Bach in some way, as well as learning the music of the land, to be informed about the replication and to understand a fifth or certain musical notes and how annotations work sometimes, and how suspenseful a note can be, and that can bring you knowledge. But in terms of its positive or negative value, I don't think we can ever discuss that, because there's something inherently being invoked in one, emotionally speaking. So that's the subjective like quality that is always imbued within music. Objectively speaking, I don't know if I can ever prescribe a number of merit or value, unless you're just asking me my personal opinion about that. However,
I guess where I'm coming from is that when I was younger, I was in band for high school for basically from 6th grade all the way to senior year, and a lot of that, especially high school, I started like reading and getting into like musical theory, got into jazz, started listening to people like Duke Ellington, people like Chet Baker, like these basically guys who are like really musically talented and like classical music. And I was like, Slater said he was like 5 years ago kind of like a snob, where I thought, oh, if music isn't classical, or if it's not like really sophisticated jazz, then all music is bad, all music is like garbage, it's not these things. Because I was looking at it from a very technical musical theory lens, like saying like, oh, can you play this piece in this key A minor, can you play this piece in this, can you play it by 3/4, stuff like that, just going on and on. And like you said earlier, once you actually listen to things, and I feel like what I give credit to rap for doing a lot is that you have people like MF Doom, or like the OG people, and some of the newer guys too, where they find a way to have like almost poetry with their raps, like they're telling a story basically like that.
That's what it was supposed to be about, man. It was supposed to be about turning the system upside down within poetry, telling people to go fuck themselves if you weren't from here, but you had your own way of doing it. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people. People don't read into that. They look at the negativities part first. You know what I mean? Like yeah, you hear people say like, "Oh, hip hop is violent. It's always about gangbang, drugs, fucking stuff people
like
who
that."
Say stuff like that aren't really listening to people because they don't want to listen. They don't want to listen. They want to. They haven't
listened to a Mos Def. They haven't listened to a Talib Kweli. They haven't listened to a Black Thought. They haven't listened to a Royce 5'9" in terms of his like.
Yeah,
you haven't listened.
And that's the other thing. And that's the other thing. Stuff like that and stuff like those artists you just mentioned, you have to dissect them. Just like movie actors and movie directors, you have to dissect why they do certain things. One of my favorite movie directors of all time is Spike Lee. Why does he do those? What do you call them? Why does he do those flashbacks? Because he's trying to show you what things were like in the 60s and 70s. Why does he do the rolling cart? Because he's trying to show emotion about when a person is going through things and the world is moving slow around them or moving fast around them. There's methods to people's madnesses when things happen. Same thing with Nas. Same thing with Big. Big was trying to tell you shit was going on with him that no one else was going through. Before he was murdered, he was thinking about killing himself. He said it in the last song of Ready to Die. He was like, I'm thinking that like if somebody's out here to kill me, I might as well just kill myself now. He says it. So like these are things that these are things that like, but you have to dissect these things. People look at songs that Biggie said, like "Who Shot You," you know, his song when he was, you know, coming at Tupac and they were having their beef. They look at that and the violence behind that and not listening to the whole story. You know what I mean? So that's where I think Black people and Black culture gets a bad rap. But when you look at this situation, because again, there's more to hip hop than just the music. There's the fashion, there's the graffiti, there's the breakdancing. A lot of those things get the back burner to this. But that's, you know, hip hop is one of the most successful and profitable genres in music today. And I think that's the other part that gets watered down. You know what I mean? Because you let going back to what Sola was saying earlier, you get corporations getting into it. Now everybody's got their hand in it. Everybody's got a YouTube channel. Everybody's got a SoundCloud where they can just upload songs and, you know, but that's, you know, and I think it kind of waters down people who actually like make lyrics and do those type of things. But again, everybody has their own moment in time. Everything has its own time capsule.
I think Syndrome said it best, and it plays into that idea. And two artists, I think, parallel to what I said before, as well. Patrick Stump, Soul Punk, released in, I believe, 2018, said, the positive of society is that everyone has an outlet. The bad part is that everyone gets to have an outlet. There's no filtering. There's no boundary in which someone could produce a work in this sphere in this time period, which is great since voices we would never have heard of, who would never been able to refine their sound, now have a barrier of entry in which they can create and inspire to do something better. The also big problem is that everyone now there's a proliferation of sounds that are unimaginative or uninspired and are leading to or desiring to capitalize on what sonically is doing well, thus leading to saturation of a sound where it could have been around for a long time period, but then things become derivative, such as a Baby Goth, who admittedly was a manager, was changing and altering her sound and her vision of how she looked to capitalize on what trap sounds were doing during the early 2010s, and to ensure to maximize profit in that sort of degree. But that's been a problem as well as long as music genres have existed. But I wanted to bring up this point I thought was kind of interesting about what you said, is that intricacies of music and nuances are often lost on the individuals who are looking at something from the outside in. Kiss, Metallica, and The Who can all be considered all the same music if you're not someone who is infatuated with rock. Or similarly, a Trippie Redd, a Lil Uzi Vert, and a Juice WRLD can all be considered the same thing if you don't really entrench yourself into what is being created currently sonically.
You have to dissect what you love. You can't. If you love something enough, you want to learn more about it. Period. That's it. Or if you don't, you're just gonna put everything in its own little box and it's just gonna stay there. You know what I mean? I don't know if you guys agree with that, but like that's how I look at it. Like, you know what I mean? And but again,
I was speaking mostly. I was speaking to the volume of the idea of people who say things like, this particular sound or music sounds the same, or the uneducated idea of this sounds the same, unless you like really are entrenched into that music or that genre. Sure, it all can sound the same unless you are really an avid fan of the music, and you can.
But again, going back to the whole Baby Goth thing, right? Like, and I'm a fan of Baby Goth. I follow her on Instagram.
Really?
She's a pretty face, bro. She's a pretty face. How do you get? Put it like this: how do you get younger white males that don't understand hip hop as well as other people might to jump in? You get a tattooed young girl who does pretty much the same thing that most of the other rappers are doing, but just in a more feminized way, right? Just and the same thing with the Little Kims. Little Kim was supposed to be in your face, but she was feminine, but she was in your face. She was sexual, but she was in your face, and she put out good music. It's just the same things in different contexts. Everything has its own little place, and again, is Baby got the plant? The jury's out on that. For that, a lot of people say yes, some people say no, but the point is, people use music as an outlet for business, all type of things, relaxation, and it's just depending on where you sit on that tree of the umbrella of music.
To hone in on a little bit more of the hip hop discussion, I would want to there's a question I would like to ask the both of you in terms of hip hop albums where you understood and finally got the appeal of it all. What was an album that just became a repeat listen, or something that you just became enamored with in terms of
oh
hip-hop?
My god. So I don't even want to my first album that I ever got, I got as a Christmas gift from a friend of mine, one of my best friends, DJ Clue's The Professional Volume 1. That was the first album I ever was handed to. Because I CDs were just being this big thing, and I think it was around my 11th birthday, but I got it for Christmas, and that was my first gift. The first gift I was ever given was the DJ Clue Professional album, because that's when you knew you were a rapper. And DJ Clue was the type of guy that was getting 5, 6, 7 rappers on one track. We talking 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 5-minute songs. Most of it didn't mean anything, but you had hard hitting lyricists on one song. You know what I mean? So for me, anybody who can tell a story like Sola said, and be poetically hard hitting was good for me. But Evidence from Dilated Peoples is one. Let me see. MF Doom, like you said. Immortal Technique.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
Immortal
Slater.
Technique is another. Let's go. We can do the Jada Kisses and the Styles P's. We can go. Busta Rhymes is one of my favorites. Eric Sermon, when he not only his lyricism, but his production. He's the reason why I make beats now. So there's a whole lot, man. And again, I used to be of the ilk of this is what I like and this is where I'm staying. But the more I dive into stuff, I understand why there's a West Side Gun. I understand why there's a Conway. I understand why people was a Flatbush Zombies. You know what I mean? That they may not be my cup of tea, but those guys,
Zombies. Yes, sir.
those guys deserve to be here because they tapped into a generation. They tapped into a generation that hip hop opens up to. You know what I'm saying? Just like any other music, man. Like as much as people want to talk bad about, because hip hop was really big on the anti-gay movement, but there's a strong gay movement in hip hop too. There was a rapper back in the 90s called Caution. He was dope. You know what I mean? People didn't want to dive into his stuff because I think nowadays we're in a more tolerant world, and that's what we need to be in. You know what I mean? That's how you get ideas out. That's how you get education out, through ideas and understanding.
That's dope.
So, what album speaks to you in that way? What album that is your immediate album that comes to mind when you think of hip hop?
So I was going to mention earlier when we were talking about vinyls. This is a very close memory to me. My mother had a bunch of vinyl tracks and I was listening to them, Bob Marley, stuff like that. And I was like, all right, that's dope. and I didn't really touch it. Then she got me a vinyl for Kid See Ghost, Kid Cudi, and that was fresh when it released. She was able to get hands on one for me. I remember listening to that album nonstop, and just, that is my go-to album to this day. I just love it so much. It's between that and I don't know. It's just I always liked people like Jimi Hendrix or Grateful Dead, that like psychedelic-esque feel to the music type thing. And Kids See Ghosts like really just revelated that for me. That's why I love that album so much. I know it's like a lot of people don't like it as much, or like it's mid, but I'm like, nah, it's actually pretty good. I enjoy it.
A lot artists are a lot, and as a producer myself, a hip hop producer myself, like I get really upset when certain artists don't pick my beats, right? It's because I'm like, man, I made certain beats specifically for this particular artist and they didn't pick it, right? But again, everybody has a different ear. Just like Sola said, certain things touch people's ears in different ways. So you can't.
A lot of people, they don't like Cudi. You know what I mean? Like they're like, oh, I just rather listen to Ye. I'd listen to Kanye. And I'm like, nah, but Cudi, he got some good shit though. Like to me, growing up, Cudi was my guy, definitely. Because
Cudi speaks to you in a way that Kanye can't. You know what I mean? There's a way.
There's a way. Kanye. I love Kanye's music too, but it's not as on a personal level. You guys get what I'm saying? Like there's rappers, artists, that's like on a personal level.
To speak to Kid Cudi, I think what makes Kid Cudi uniquely different than a lot of rappers is the idea of unbrassed and unequivocal sorrow that could be described in a song. Usually, if there was an artist that was creating around that particular time period of 2010 to early 2000s that did dip into sorrow, there was really some level of braggadocious, some level of vengeance, some level of payback that was supposed to be expressing that vulnerability rather than just simply being a bleeding heart within that nature.
Exactly. Well, tough man game type thing, and like you have Kid Cudi over here dropping songs like Mr. Rager or things like Ghost, and it's just like he
was the first artist. I feel like, in my opinion, he was the first artist of you guys' generation where it's like it's okay to talk about your feelings and not have to caveat about it.
Like with no need to caveat the emotion with something else of like, well, I got success, well, I got fame. No, it was more like an example. Like, for example, Story to My Life is literally him just talking about
soundtrack to my life. Oof, man,
that's a big part of that's a big part of somebody's life being spilt on wax. You know what I mean? And you hold the test of time in your hands. Like, you know what I'm saying? So for me, one of the greatest albums for me, and a lot of people may not agree with me for this, is Evidence's The Weatherman LP. Like, a lot of people don't, but just the way that's, it doesn't even have to be about the content of the music. Just away from a music producer standpoint, like the sonics of how gritty Evidence made his beats while he was making the album. Like, and how, at the end of the album, he's talking about how his mother had passed away of cancer. Like, and she was a photographer and she was a actress. Like, just the way he constructed the story, and he had, like, you know what I mean, and put things together. It's like, wow. And I fell in love with him, not only as an artist, but as a person, man, because he's so withdrawn, but he's so powerful in the way he talks. You know what I mean? It's very crazy.
Well, I like about just one last thing, and then sorry about that.
You go.
Soundtrack to My Life. Yeah, that song, as I would argue, that's one of the few songs that actually brought me to tears when I was listening to it, because I remember as like a younger kid, basically, I grew up in a pretty abusive household with a father, and then later becoming absent. And it's weird. You have this dynamic, basically, where it's like you had this person treat you like shit, but now that they're out of your life, it's kind of like, was I not good enough? You just rejected me, like, you got bored of me, like, doing things like hit me and shit. But like you hear like Cudi, and then he does song. He talks about, what's that line he talks about for his dad? He's like, ever since, he said, like, ever since my father died, I ain't been right since. And then he goes into it more and more. And if you know Cudi, he had a pretty shitty dad that did the same thing, beat the shit out of him and just left. And then, like, he has a chorus, I've got some issues that nobody could see, and then it's like him saying all these emotions are pouring out of me. And then the line that brought me to tears though had to be, and I am happy, ain't that the saddest lie? And then him saying, I hope I see myself as a sacrifice so the other kids out there don't keep themselves up at night. Like, you guys can't tell me that's not poetic. That's not beautiful right there. Like, I felt like he was speaking to me, That's why he said to me.
Each artist is their own poet to the world, right? Everybody, like again, my music may not touch you in a certain way, Sola, but there may be somebody else that's in my crew that may do that. You know what I mean? And you just have to find that. You just have to find that person to get that to you. And Cuddy was that for you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, not everybody's going to understand what Immortal Technique meant, or an MF Doom meant, or even or James Yancey. Rest in peace to James Yancey. But like, we have to understand that like everybody has that. That's what hip hop gives you. It gives you a smorgasbord of different types of artists to interact with. If you're in the conscious stuff, like you said, you got the Talib.
I hope this is a weird question for both of you, if you don't mind me asking. But
go ahead.
Do you see like hip hop as a genre as being a coping generation for every? A coping mechanism for every generation. Like, you had NWA era was all like tough. We out here for survival. And then you had like later eras, like, hey, look at me flex my stuff. Look at I'm actually made it. I made it ma type stuff. And then later on, just goes like each generation things like, clout chasing. Like, do you feel like that's why some things connect more? Because me, I always was like, why I see some rappers, like, I connect more, like you said, to Kid Cudi, because the stories he tells, I connect more to it because I lived through that shit. I love Wu-Tang Clan to death, but I wasn't, gangbanging. I wasn't in those areas, that wasn't my time or generation. Respect music.
Well, let's throw away that notion right now, because they weren't gangbanging either. They were telling a story about them living on the block, but they weren't gangbanging. Again, everything has its own time capsule, right? Like you said, NWA, they were living in the middle of South Central and all of those things. You remember Public Enemy and what they were going through coming into the music scene. Like, a lot of that stuff is about Black empowerment, moving within the ranks of how you get, how you uplift your community, how you bring your community to the forefront. It's a little different now, because now it's more about, emotions and drug use and depression and stuff of that nature. And you hear a lot of people my age who are kind of like, I'm not really into this stuff. This isn't really my bag. But it talks to a lot of kids, because kids are going through that. Kids are going through depression. We're understanding what it's like to have anxiety and having to take pills to just go through the day. Like, when you have artists saying these types of things. Yeah. And the older I get, I'm understanding that now. I can't knock a kid for liking something because he's trying to get through the day with his music. You know what I'm saying? Or her music. I can't do that. It's very interesting working with kids at a middle school, as my day job, because I get to ask them questions about their artists and why they listen to them. It makes me angry when I see artists, or I see kids wearing t-shirts of artists and they know nothing about them. Like, my students will wear shirts of like Aaliyah, right? But don't know any songs, right? Like, I'll literally stop them during the day and ask them,
Slater, I thought Dr. Dre was a clothing brand.
I thought Dr.
Oh, brother, this guy.
Get out of my class, man. You're done. Straight to the principal's office.
Or you get kids who wear shirts like Boys in the Hood, the Boys in the Hood movie T-shirts, and then they're like, "Oh, I thought that was a hip hop group."
Oh, brother.
And you're like, "Wow." So again, it's a lack of education, it's a lack of understanding, but everybody has that, bro. Everybody has that. The older I get, I can only appreciate the fact that they took the time out to go get the shirt. and they want to learn more about it. As much
That's
as I
true.
beat them in the head over it, they want to learn. They want to know.
To me,
What about you, Hazy? Yeah, the question I asked.
Okay, so two things I want to bring up is, I'm super paranoid. In Kid Cudi's song "Soundtrack to My Life," he says, "I'm super paranoid, like a sixth sense. Since my father died, I haven't right since." And I think this is very interesting. It's like, and I try to piece the puzzle of the universe, split an eighth of a shroom so I can see the universe. The idea of like trying to make a lot about like life or existence in of itself is such a hard thing to like put on yourself, especially I think it becomes a necessity to think about these things when someone who's supposed to be your guiding branch dies at such a young age. It's such a impressionable time of your life. But I also believe that the closing line within the song is very interesting too, when he says, "My heart's an open sore. I hope it heals soon. I live in Cancun, the opposite of Cancun. It's never sunny, the dark side of the moon. So it's more than right. I try to shed some light on this man. Not many people on the planet understand." And even in the song, he talks about like it's all been done and my cock's been stuck. This is during the time where his debut album is very successful, but he felt the need to write something like, I suppose I'm supposed to be happy in this moment of my time in my life where I have success, and it almost feels spoiled or entitled to still express these emotions in a time period where I'm a very successful person. But it's important to even express these emotions, such as our people or celebrities who have left the world too soon because they felt as though they couldn't express themselves. And even in music, back in the day when we would have our LA Cool J's, they would get close to like some expressing of vulnerability, but usually it would be like a love ballad, like "I Need Love," Ja Rule, who was the R&B thug with a lot of his songs. I wanted to bring it back to answer the question. I just wanted I just wanted to speak on "Soundtrack to My Life" because it's a really amazing song, because I believe that it's one of those songs that it's not really caveated in terms of like expressing these emotions, since it's not like for the purposes of revenge. It's not done in the purposes of like getting back at somebody. It's just like, no, this is just the pain I've dealt with. So when it comes to albums that it's not my initial album. I would say that my favorite album, it's a battle, really. So there's two albums. The first album that really got me just enamored with hip hop was when an uncle of mine had just given me an album, a Black album. And so even without having listened to the entirety of Jay-Z's discography, I just felt like this was a veteran, someone who had like a legacy that was pronounced through the album without him having to reiterate all of it. But even the song "What More Can I Say" can emphasize that to you in more clearer terms if you were unfamiliar with him. When he says things like, when you break down, I went platinum a bunch of times. I animated like fake Busta Rhymes. I'm supposed to be the number one on everyone's list. Let's see what happens when I no longer exist. And then the song just ends with an echo of "What More Can I Say." It's such a fascinating song because even if you went around Jay-Z's music since its inception to now, you do feel like this is someone signing off with a project that he feels as though is fitting to leave on, with so much he's spoken about as an artist in his time period. The other album that I would say that made me just a hip hop head, because while sure Jay-Z was an interesting artist and I love his music, I didn't really feel as though I related to him as much. So when it comes to an album that I would say wholeheartedly got me with his relatability and his story and narrative, it would have to be Kanye West's Late Registration. And that album is just an amazing project from start to finish. From "I'm on My Way Home," when Common speaks about home and what it is in the sampling. This is my first album that I was really introduced to some serious sampling. So it almost from "Touch the Sky" to "And I Heard Him Say," how it just starts off with like this piano, and there's this weird feeling of like adolescent observation that is like unbridled in its nature. It's not tainted by any sort of expectation of like how the world is supposed to like make you think about that, or how you're supposed to feel about it, how judgmental people become as we get older about speaking our minds, or what immediately comes to our head, like, okay, I get a job that pays me a minimum wage and I know the government administers AIDS, so I guess I just pay like the minister say awkward out bars. on some hot cars, the things we see in the screen that's not ours, but these niggas from the hood, so their dreams not far. Like it's such an amazing song, and Alan B does such a great job to speak towards this um unaware like sadness about the current state of things that is like observed from like almost like a child's like understanding of things and how they're going on. And so the album to me is such a great project, from acting music to um
And if you,
uh, We
hold on,
Major.
hold on.
Go ahead.
I want to talk over you. I wasn't sure if you. I may have been a little delay. Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
No, what I was gonna say was, and if you think about what you just said, like everything coexists with each other, right? Like going back to what you said just now, and what Sola said. Everybody has that struggle, like you were saying, like for me, right? I'm gonna share with you one of my favorite lines in hip hop. Came out not that long ago. It's from my favorite artist. His name is Evidence, right? It goes, if I'm on deck, I'm studying the picture. Hitting the ball is just a smaller part of the bigger picture, right? Following my calling like a drifter. It's Mister pressing up bars like weightlifters. Like it's like, again, it's all about struggle. It's all about what you see the world is showing. What you see the world is showing you, right? It's the same thing. It doesn't matter how old you are. We all have the same issues. We all have the same struggles. We all cry the same. We all bleed the same. We all have parents who we think don't give a shit about us. We all have these weird like quirks about each other and how we deal with them. And I think the cool thing about and you get this mostly with a lot of hip hop artists, right? They give you that on the individual level, because what hip hop is basically individual, right? Because it's not just the drummer and bassist and they're just going at it. It's one guy standing in front of a microphone telling you his lifestyle, his story, his lifestyle, or whatever, in a 16 bar poetry style, right? And then go into the next song. So again, going back to what you were saying, and to Sola, to Sola's story that he was saying about his parents and stuff. Cuddy's a perfect example, because Cuddy was going through what Sola was going through at that exact moment, at that exact time. You know what I mean? At that exact setup. One of the artists that I don't listen to as much, Eminem. Eminem does the same thing. Eminem talks, any artist can do that type of stuff. He talks to a lot of suburban white kids who, are going, or at least early in his career, being around those parents that were not very caring about his well-being, but he struggled through it, and it showed you, if he's white and he can rap, then, other kids can do it. So it's it's the same thing, man. It's all about what you get out of it. You know what I mean? It's all about what you believe your music can bring you. You know what I mean? Certain artists are not going to give you that warm and fuzzy feeling. They're, because they don't hit you at that moment. And it's also about where you are in your lifetime as well at that moment.
Yeah, to speak to another song that I thought was so great from the project in itself, Solace really made me think about something, because some songs really make you relate to some degree, whereas problems that I was dealing with at home and questioning whether or not I should even be home, do not touch too deeply into that, but it was the idea of questioning whether or not you could run away. Well, me and my family are all on good terms as of now. In that immediate moment of time, there was a song from the same project I'm speaking about earlier, the registration, called My Way Home. And one of my favorite lines is towards the closing part of it. And it's a 1 minute and 34-second song, but the song goes, making sense, we hustle for change. Revolution in the game is another name for life fighting. Someone to stay in the corner like Mike Tyson. Heights fighting for hits to heighten the hell. But he know he can only get as high as he fell. Show money becomes bail. Relationships become jail. Children are unheld. What's love was for sale. Behold the pale. Horse got me trapped like R. Kelly in a bell, and it may not be such a bad idea if I never go home again. It's an interesting idea, because even during that time period of, I can appreciate it as as an adult, knowing that they're talking about success and like being on the road all the time and not seeing people you like were so familiar with. But at the same time, it's like how home is so chaotic for him that the road might be a better alternative than even going home. For me, it was the idea of like the chaos that was going on at home and like deliberating whether or not I should go home, knowing everything I was suffering from at that time period. So it's a such a well layered song where you can relate to it in another way, and there's some lines that you can just simply think about and just peruse for long periods of time to really get to the heart of the album of itself. So I think this is probably one of Kanye West's best albums. Obviously, musically speaking, like audibly, if we were speaking exclusively audibly, I would say obviously Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy due to the ambitious music and sonically where he was going with it. And I feel like it was a culmination of everything he was like experimenting with up to that point. The aesthetic distortion of Yeezus, the sampling of Graduation perfected, the collaborations he had been known for since making albums for people like Cameron and Purple Haze. I think all these ideas and like skills he had been crafting up to that point really got put to the forefront with the adversity that he was considered ostracized by the community at large due to his bombastic opinions that I believe that most people held at the time about Beyonce winning over Taylor Swift. So
He was also going through a lonely period in his life, losing his mother.
That is
So
true.
you-
That's true.
So if you throw all that stuff you just said on top of throwing in the fact that he lost his mother on that, and again, his mother was one of his biggest fans and biggest critics, right? You factor in the fact that then we started learning about his mental health and how he couldn't, he wasn't able to cope, and then the Taylor Swift situation, and then you got Dark Twisted Fantasies, and then you got, him trying to figure out who he was as a person. You know what I mean? So again, I feel like what's the College Dropout was like his introduction to the world, and then when he came in, it was like, okay, I'm here. It's me and Jay-Z and the guys. It's me and Dame Dash, and we're gonna do this. But then it was just like, okay, then you had Late Registration. He kind of figured stuff out. Then it was like, okay, now my mother's gone. Where do I go? I want to push more envelopes, but I can't do it in this type of environment because I got these. I want to be bigger.
He never was the same after his mom died too. Like,
yeah, he wanted to be. I think, in my opinion, he wanted to be in the same breath as Jay-Z. He wanted the bravado of it. So I think after his mother passed too, it was kind of just like, I'm just gonna keep working and nobody checked on him. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of people were checking on him when he was doing his earlier career stuff, because you could totally tell in certain conversations that you had with him, in his early career, he was focused on what he was trying to do. As opposed to now, when you
sorry, go ahead. My bad.
As opposed to now, when you hear like Yeezus, or you hear like the not what's the newest album that just came out? The one he put out when he
Donda?
Huh? Donda. Yeah, Donda.
Is that his most recent one?
Donda to me is just a bunch of songs he randomly threw together.
Yeah, it feels erratic. It doesn't feel cohesive.
It feels erratic, but I think that's where his mind is at that moment. Just like I said about Solar. Kid Cudi hit him at the right time.
I'm erratic? Is that what you're saying, Slater?
You are erratic. Anyway. But the artist, anybody can hit you in a part if they hit you the right way in poetically. I mean, like not physically, poetically. I mean, like anybody can inspire you. It just depends on where you are at that specific time. Like I can meet a homeless person on the street or an unhoused person on the street, and if I have a conversation with that person can probably make me think about things that I've never thought about saying or doing. It depends on what that person says. It's the same thing with anybody, because we're all human beings. I think we look at Kanye as this like super being that can do all these things, but he goes through the same stuff that we all go through. You know what I mean? Like Busta Rhymes goes through the same stuff that we all go through. Busta was in an interview when he put out his latest album, his last album, talking about how he was almost on the verge of death because he was gaining so much weight and he was drinking like crazy and he couldn't breathe and all type of stuff. He had to lose weight. You know what I mean? How many people have to, artists are human beings too. Like we just, we look at them as these demigods. We call them crazy because they do certain things. Like Kanye's screaming for help, man. You know what I mean?
For Kanye, this is gonna be a hot take for me tonight. I'm not on the same train where people are like saying like we need to cancel his man to like oblivion and stuff like that. Like it's like you said, Slater. I feel like he needs help. Like a lot of the things he's venting is just stuff like his life crumbling around him and him he's
crumbling. He's not in it, and he's hanging around people who don't really. He's hanging around people who don't really have his best thought process. Yeah,
can I?
You know what I mean?
Like add to that a little bit.
There's a difference. There's a difference between me having a conversation with Sola and me being like, Sola, this is how I feel about X, Y, and Z, as opposed to him being friends with like, I don't know, Jay Leno and them being, you know what I mean? There's levels to friendship. There's levels to money and power and how things work in our society. You know what I mean? These celebrities think that these other celebrities are their friends. They're really not. You know what I mean? And I don't think, and Kanye more than anybody, I think anybody that we've named needs somebody that's gonna steer. He's not a child, but like you need somebody, and he's when you're not mentally, and this is my opinion. I'm not a what do you call it? I'm not a medical professional, but I feel like people who have mental illnesses need someone to just talk to just have somebody in your corner and say, hey man, try not looking at it like this. Try looking at it like this. And try to understand that you're not alone in this situation. And I think his music is a good outlet, but when he locks himself for days on end and then he's arguing with his ex-wife about the kids and he's not getting those kind of conversations from people, or they're not giving him what he needs is an ear. He needs somebody other than his phone,
Yeah, amen. But for Kanye, I guess he's interesting because you could always tell, like, from the get-go. I don't know if you guys seen that Netflix, mini documentary on him. Have you guys seen that yet?
I have. I saw pieces of it.
Yeah, but basically, for people listening in, like, the beginning of the documentary, I'd highly recommend checking out, is, like, young Kanye, and it's, like, his buddy who's, like, recording him, basically, and he's, like, trying to be an up-and-coming, producer and eventually a rapper, and, like, they be doing shit, like, going through, like, his apartment. He has his smallest apartment. He has, like, a couple packets of mustard in there, not even food, and he spends all of his time just, like, pouring his heart and soul out into, like, his music, his beats and stuff he's trying to flip and sell. And then there's a scene that really stuck with me where he goes to, like, some record label trying to sell some of the stuff to them, and they're like, hey man, like, you don't have what it takes, basically, like, you should look at changing professions, basically. And you see in the video, even a young Kanye, how much that mentally broke him, because when you as an individual pour so much of your heart and soul into a given craft, to be told that you shouldn't even be doing this, that messes with you mentally. And most of Kanye's life, I feel like for him, especially, he always has paranoia that someone's going to stab him in the back. Always, there's someone with a knife behind me. He has really bad trust issues. And with, his wife leaving and stuff like that, it just his mother dying, it was a big house of cards falling down on top of him. And that's why I'm saying, should Kanye, we have a conversation about what he's talking about? Sure. I don't think he should be, thrown to the gutter and forgotten forever. Because at the end of the day, like you said, these artists are still people, and it's just they're thinking different from us. Like, you hear in his music all the time, he says lines that are crazy. Like, I see autism, that's my superpower, stuff like that. I fuck being normal. He talks about it all the time. He's like, yeah, I would never want to be like you. And then that song? I thought about killing myself today. And then he said, I thought about killing you, and I think about killing myself every day. So you best believe I thought about killing you. Like, shit like that. He says off-the-wall stuff. Like, whoa, man. Like, it's just... I don't know. To me, it's just that. Like, I hope he gets help, man.
It goes back to the time capsule conversation.
Yep.
Everything has its, again, Onyx was one of the first hip hop groups that I listened to, and I remember they were the first hip hop group that were cursing on records. And I remember one of the first lines in one of their songs is, "I set a whole choir on fire." Now, mind you, you're talking to a kid whose parents went to church all the time, and you setting a choir on fire. That's crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just from a person, you're letting your whole life out on paper and on wax. You know what I mean? The microphone in front of you is your window to the world. Again, he needs his outlets. Some of his outlets can be dangerous. His music can be dangerous depending on who he is by himself. You know what I mean? And I think, there's nobody there for him. You know what I mean? Now, do I think he should be hanging out with Nazis? Do I think that he should be? No. But I also think you going back to what you were saying, Sola. Every artist, including myself, has an ego, right? We all have egos. We all have that little ego in us. Like when somebody tells us that we're not good at something, even goes back to when we were kids. Like, if a girl you thought was cute and you wanted to ask her out and she called you ugly in front of everybody, that bruised your ego. You know what I mean? Like, man who sits in his room, all day working on beats, and then he brings his beats to the studio, and then somebody is like, like I said earlier, I make beats, and then when I give them out to artists, it's like, oh, I can make an artist 10 beats, 10 beats a week or whatever, and then they only pick 2. I'm like, fuck, what the fuck am I gonna do with these other 8? I made 10 of these specifically for you. It's like, but that's just how it is. It's a huge blow to the ego. But the same thing could be said for Michelangelo. You know how many people probably went up to him and was like, yeah, this painting sucks. Or this little air thing you made sucks. You know what I mean? So it's
the Catholic Church did that. Yeah, they were mad because he would draw naked people.
It's a human.
And there was one piece that literally,
all these emotions and all this stuff is human traits written on paper form, and I think people don't really understand that a lot of it is mental. You know what I mean? When I think Busta Rhymes said it best in on I forgot what song it was. When you're in that studio and you're in that 4x4 space recording, it's just you by yourself. It's you by yourself opening the window to the world. That's what recording is. That's what music is. That's what, you know what I mean? But that's any art form, any drawing you make, anything, you know what I mean? Anything art wise, you know what I mean? It's you taking pieces of yourself and throwing it against the wall and hoping that somebody says, you know what? This has touched me in a way that nobody else, like nothing has ever touched me. Like Kid Cudi, like Evidence from Dilated Peoples, like Immortal Technique, like, you know what I mean? So like, this is because we hold these people in so high regard because they have a piece of art, they have a piece of our hearts, you know what I mean? And that's what music does. That's what I hope my music does for somebody else one day.
I think that with Kanye West and all the accolades he's gone through and becoming a billionaire, having one of the most desired shoes, one of the most dark shoes, and one of the most desired shoes out there with the Yeezy brand, and creating a clothing line that is, for the most part, very visually divisive, but selling out anyway. I think to some regard, people look at him as someone who can do everything. Not in terms of, I think, in seeing someone who is as smart as Kanye West is, I would go as far as to say, I would say he's a genius. He's absolutely a genius. But with bipolar and mania, and someone who's being very candid about him having these aspects, even before Kim had left him, she had spoken about how he deals with love and mania. And the problem with mania is how it makes you incapable of seeing the flaws in what you're doing. In fact, it almost makes you feel superhuman, as though you could do anything. And with someone with all the finances to do anything, and to ability to get anywhere, and to be such a desired voice within the media, a pariah to some regard, and covenant voice that people want to hear from, they're going to let him speak unfeathered, even when it's not the wisest. He's going to be supported by people who are not looking towards Kanye West for his mental health or where he is psychologically. Rather, it's all for the purposes of to be vetted, for verification, to feel exonerated for their friends' beliefs, rather than how Kanye West actually believes them or not. Because after this whole tour of him going city to city, talking about these individuals, we all know which ones he's referring to, he just dropped off the face of the earth. So this wasn't something he was really passionate. Like, I feel like akin to this moment was when he ran for presidency. No one thought he was able to do it, but this was a man on stage with the patriotic flag died on his head, crying, like, hey guys, I don't think the guy on stage is alright, but people are so enamored in Star Trek that they're not taking into account that this is possibly someone, even though he's a genius. I think the problem is that people create this dichotomy. You're either
hurt
crazy,
people hurt people. Hurt
True.
people hurt people.
But
Right?
I think people create this dichotomy where you're either crazy or you're a genius, and they can't like ameliorate that problem, that it can't be one and the same thing. It's like, no, I would happy, like, people, I think people need to acknowledge, accept more often than not, that sometimes crazy people are intelligent and are very high IQ, but we need to also understand that sometimes these episodes that Canvas goes through is a instance of his like a moment of psychosis. And so, especially when you have people like Alex Jones looking at you like, yeah, you kind of sound a bit like when you're on.
You know it's bad when Alex Jones says you've gone too far. Yeah, you know that's bad.
But again,
He's like, I don't know about that.
again, gentlemen, you got to remember, hurt people, right? So like, you're looking at a guy. Alex Jones knows what he's doing. When you're picking a guy who's going through his biggest mental illness forever, and he just happens to say that he wants to run for president while talking about how people in the music industry are ruining his life, and then, you know what I mean? It's real convenient.
Yeah, no, I absolutely believe it to be pervasive. I absolutely believe that a lot of people who saw him in the Manic episode capitalized.
And again, I'm not excusing anything that Kanye has done, because I feel as if you can't walk some of this stuff back. You can't walk it back. You can't. But you also have to look from the time, like I said, from the time he put out the College Dropout album to now, and where his head is. You know what I mean? Again, people grow and change and think their opinions change over time as you get older. Yes, I agree with that. But when you look at the way he goes from one extreme to the next so quickly as he did before, quicker now than he did before, there's definitely some issue there about him and how he handles his business, and how people around him just really aren't there for his well-being. And I think mental health is very important when we have these conversations, because it's like, who's around us to tell us these things? Yes, even Batman, who lost both of his parents, had Alfred there to tell him, like, yo, bro, like, yeah, this Batman thing is cool, but you gotta rest your body a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta have somebody there to put you in a position to say, yo, bro, you gotta pull the leash down a little bit.
Someone to have you tell that.
One of my favorite animes is Inuyasha, right? What's the one thing? Do any of you watch Inuyasha?
It's been a long time since I've seen that. What about you?
I've watched Inuyasha.
What's the one thing that when Inuyasha gets out of hand, what's the one thing that happens that Kagome does that keeps him in line? He tells him to sit, right? And he plops himself on the ground. We don't have, and again, I'm not saying that we got to treat Kanye like a dog, but you have to put him, like, you have to have someone say, hey, Kanye, man, you are a genius. You are, and that's the thing. We're partially to blame for this. The public is partially to blame for this, because we feed the monsters. We do this for everything. We do this for Rihanna. We do this for Jay-Z. We do these for, like, even Martha Stewart. When Martha Stewart got out of jail, what's the, oh man, Martha Stewart out of jail, blah blah. You know what I mean? And you throw, she's doing all these commercials, and we have this society that's enamored with people who have some sort of negative connotation attached to them. But that's because it brings more to talk about. If everybody was helping everybody across the street and we were nice to each other, there's nothing to talk about. You know what I mean? There's no positivity. Positivity doesn't sell because there's nothing to talk about. You know what I mean? Like, because then the end then doesn't happen. If that makes sense. You know what I mean? Am I making sense, Sola?
Well, you're making sense. I agree with you.
I think we live in a world, you know, but I think that's our inherent nature as people, where you know, and with my album that I put out with my boy Magava Knowledge, we talk about how, you know, living in a world where you have people wanting likes on Instagram and all that stuff can be dangerous for young people. But again, that's where we are. You know what I mean? That's where we are when we're trying to get, you know, people to look at us. COVID was one of the biggest detractors of conversation and, you know, human interaction. You know what I mean? And now it's like, oh, I don't trust this person. Even before COVID, you know, even in the early, like, you know, 2014, 2015, you started hearing people say, well, I don't really trust my neighbors. Fuck my neighbors, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't really, you know, back in the day, it was like, hey, I needed my neighbors to keep an eye on my kids while they were gone. And, you know, you did something wrong in the street, you got your ass kicked by the neighbor next door. Now it's like, oh, I don't want, you know, don't talk to my kid. Don't, you know what I mean? So we've gone away from a lot of the conversational pieces. You know what I'm saying? Even to the basic primal stuff of dating now. You know what I mean? We don't trust each other. We go out and we think that people are out to hurt us, and that's what Kanye's doing. You know what I mean? On a huge level in his mind. You know what I'm saying? And part of that is, you know, because everybody has that part of paranoia if you're an artist, right? Da Vinci had it, right? A lot of people have it because you don't know who to trust. But it's a bigger thing now. You know what I mean? With everyone.
I want to ask a question too, leading into that. You brought up a good point. Do you feel that Kanye, in a way, with social media, that had like a more of effect on him? Because I feel like he ended up getting in the wrong crowd, and excuse me for saying this, but they basically used him as token. Like, he was their token force forward to be like, oh, we possibly can't be, you know, racist or whatever it is. You know, we got a black guy leading the charge, stuff like that. And, like, he didn't fully believe, like, half the shit he was saying. They were just feeding that shit in his head and getting him to say things like that. And, like, think about it like this. All those guys, Nick Fuentes, you know, Milo Yiannopoulos, the moment after the Alex Jones podcast, like, and everyone, like, just dropped the hammer on Kanye, they disappeared. They dipped. They collect their checks and left. They're like, all right, on to the next thing now. And I'm like, okay, so it really shows you how much they cared about Kanye, because the moment he wasn't, you know, usable anymore, they just left him.
No one in his corner saying, yo, Kanye, man, like, are you sure this is a good idea? Are you sure going on this podcast is going to get you? Listen, Kanye's not a child. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to. But again, you're always gonna need someone in your ear. There's always the village that raises a child is a good analogy, right? There's always got to be somebody in your ear, man. Like, I remember when I made the album last year, right? And I put out the photo. Me and my boy put out the photo shoot for the album. I'm wearing a T-shirt that's got a nun. It's on my profile picture on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm wearing, you know, the nun's got her middle finger up. My mom hit me up the next day. I was like, no. And, you know, I explained my position. My mother's a very religious woman, but and we have our disagreements here and there, whatever. But at the same time, it's like, at least I have that part in my ear. I have somebody in my ear saying, hey, that wasn't a good idea, or, you know, maybe you should have thought about it this way or whatever. You know, I don't think Kanye has any of that, and I think mental health has a lot to do with that, because even in a state like that, you need somebody to say, hey man, this ain't cool, or that's not cool, or maybe you should have thought about thought about it this way. You know what I mean?
Nah, I'll be with you, Slater.
I think that's what Kanye's mom was for him. You think Kim Kardashian is going to take care of his?
Fuck no, of course she's not.
Take care of his medications. You know what I mean? You gotta, So you have to gauge the people you have in your life and your influences, because they make or break who you are, in my opinion. You know what I mean? And I think not even going back to what you said, Sola, not even the token thing. I just a negative outlook on how you look at the world through Kanye. You know how people look at Kanye like he's this juggernaut of an evil person, which, that the jury's still out on that with me too. But at the same time, would he have said all of those things if his mother was still alive? Would he have said all those things if he was rightly medicated? Would he have said all those things? You know what I mean? Would Will Smith have slapped Chris Rock if he knew that, you know what I mean? If it was just a joke, you know what I mean? Are we really? That's it's all about how we.
I would have put a bunch of fucking holes in Will Smith when he did that shit.
What happened?
I said I would have been putting a bunch of holes in Will Smith if he hit me like that. Nah, I ain't taking that disrespect.
I'm just saying.
I think in terms of the Will Smith thing, there's a lot of there's a deeper layer of a clearly distraught relationship, because if you look at the pitch,
he's married to a fucking succubus. That's why that woman's evil as fuck.
I don't know.
I don't want to say it's. Listen, he made the choice. I don't want to put it all on Jada.
No,
I don't think it's right to put it all on Jada, but I also believe
Jada though. Really?
I don't want to listen. In the beginning, I probably would have thought that way. But again, I look at it like this. He dangled the carrot of putting him on blast on that red table, right? And she knew that. I don't know if she knew, but he knew that he needed to figure out a way to regain his masculinity in front of the world. So Chris Rock just happened to be the catalyst for that, if that makes sense.
And that's what makes me mad, though, because instead of addressing the problem, which was his wife, he took it out on some dude who was just doing his fucking job as a comedian. And I was like, you have Jada literally posting articles of her doing exposés on Will Smith, saying shit like, yeah, we knew Tupac, and I had to beg him not to whoop Will Smith's ass. Keep in mind, that's this man's wife talking about him being like, yeah, I had to tell another man not to beat my husband's ass. You know how embarrassing that shit is as a man to hear that?
But that does, again, hurt people, bro. We don't know where she's at in her.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? So we can, and I'm a big advocate for mental health myself, on Twitter Spaces and stuff. So I don't want to dive into that, but I also believe that she has her own issues with certain things too. For example, there was an episode where it was her, and I think it was her mother, and her daughter, and she was telling both of them how she didn't want to marry Will. Why would you say that? You know what I mean? So all of those things can be detrimental to a man's mental health. You know what I mean? And again, we're supposed to be the protectors and the heroes when things happen. And I don't want to do gender roles or any of that type of stuff. But society puts these weird gender roles on people, and it can be detrimental to people's mental health. And it's really sad, man. It's really sad because the average black man doesn't live that long, right? My dad died 3 years ago at 72, and he was always worried about when he was going to get the next dollar or when his next meal was going to come or any of that type of stuff. It's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on in this world, and I think people don't look at the inner before they look at the outer, and it's real sad. You know what I mean? It's real fucked up, especially in the black community.
Sorry for my outburst about the whole Jada thing. It's just
You good. Listen.
No, Will Smith, I looked up to him a lot, especially when he was in his Fresh Prince age and stuff like that. And just to see It's like seeing a hero you have just slowly crumble and to be a shell of his former self. Like
It's
like the same for people
again,
who
there's
love
a lot of
Kanye and
there's a
stuff.
lot of
You know what I
pressure.
mean?
There's a lot of pressure built in to that. So that's why at first I was laughing at him, and I'm like, because I couldn't stay. I can't stand his movies, right? I don't like any Will Smith movies. Will Smith to me is not really. I don't really like him.
Men in Black was good. The first Men in Black was good.
How could you, man? How
I
could
can't.
you?
The first Men in Black was good. Come on.
I'm about to hang up this phone. I'm about to really hang up this phone. No, I'm not a Will Smith fan at all. Like, and it's well documented. At first I used to make fun of him every chance I got, but then when that slap happened and I looked at it from my perspective, and I took a step back and I'm like, both of them are hurting, but we're getting most of it from Will because Will's the one that's responding. You know what I'm saying? She's manipulating him, and but again, where is she getting her manipulation from? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. She
got that from somewhere. She just didn't get that from, you know what I'm saying? So when you have combustible and then you throw the kids on top of it, bro, you know what I mean? You're throwing the kids on top, and now it's a family. Now it's a family of confusion and who's here and who's there. So it's a lot, man. It's a lot to have to deal with on top of being on social media. You know what I'm saying? On top of that, I remember after the slap with Will, she did some video on her phone, and he still looked like he hasn't gotten over the whole slapping. I think this was like days after too, and he was like, "Yo, could you put the phone down?" And she was just like, "No, I don't want to put the phone down." And they were arguing while she's holding it, like, you know what I mean? So, like, you know, and again, hurt people hurt other people. You know what I mean? I don't want to put everything on just her because that would be unfair and that's disingenuous. But yeah, like it goes like psychosis and all this stuff and depression and stuff goes way back in people's family. I had that shit in my family too. It took me years to realize that my family had certain issues that, you know what I mean? After my father was gone, and I started diving deeper into where my life was going and stuff like that. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot. And don't forget, we live in a world where, like, black people don't want to talk about their problems. I remember one of the biggest things my father used to always say to me is, "Don't tell everybody my business. Don't tell everybody our business." But meanwhile, he's yelling and screaming at me, or yelling and screaming at somebody else, and they're always arguing about the smallest of issues. You know what I mean? And holding that shit in can be detrimental sometimes, you know? So it's a lot, especially in the black community. But go ahead, I don't want to...
I'm gonna ask onto that more. So this is like something, I'll be honest, like I don't have no skin in the game for this because last I checked, I kind of lack the melanin, to put it politely, to you and Hazy. But what's it called? I wanted to know stuff like that for, like, you know, do you guys think it's like what really shaped that, you know, like the black community, especially when we're talking about music, for example, and different generational stuff? Like, we're talking about, you said there were stereotypes, like, you know, black rappers, things like that, being homophobic, and like, do you think, is it just mainly like a way to be like, hey, in our community, masculinity is a very important essence or thing that we do? Like, how would you explain that? Like,
I think from my perspective, and I can only speak for me. Growing up, the artists I listened to, it was all about being tough. It was all about being masculine. Like, you go from Rakim, KRS-One, they were trying to teach you stuff and show you like what things were, and then it went from that to like a Big Pun or a Nas, and it was always about, you know, and the DMXs and all that stuff. So you had these rough, tough guys, and I don't think they wanted to, if you were a part of the LGBTQ plus community, you know, you were in the closet about it because you don't want that stigma on your back, especially in the 90s, in the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, and being gay was not really the thing. You know what I mean? It wasn't really talked about. You didn't want to be a part of that ilk in the beginning of when people were starting to be accepted. That makes sense. You know what I mean?
Getting a lot better now, though, for like,
Yeah,
community, like, acceptance.
absolutely. I don't know if it's gotten better, but I think that I think the world is starting to be a little bit more accepting to people of different ethnic setups and LGBT. I don't. The men is a little different. It's a little different now. Like because you have certain artists telling you that it's okay to be different. It's okay to dress different. It's okay to be who you need to be at that moment. You know what I mean? And I think that's what music is about. I think that's what life is about. Like, again, the average person in my family lives to 70, 80 years old. Why are you not going to live as comfortably as you can? In my perspective, you know what I mean? You're talking to a disabled man, Sola, who was told when he was a kid that I would never be able to speak. So why am I not going to live comfortably or try to get others to live the way they want to live? You know what I mean? You may never hear from me again after this interview. Why would I tell you that you can't be comfortable? You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
If I was a religious man and I was going to sit here and say that being gay was wrong, in my opinion, I have no right to say that to you, because that's up to you and God to deal with. You know what I'm saying? Because let him deal with that. My objective on this planet is to take care of you and make sure you're good. Make sure my people in my community are good. Make sure my students are good. Make sure my music is good. Because that's what makes me happy. I got to leave this world better than the way I left it. But I'm not leaving it better if I'm shitting on somebody else for loving somebody who may be the same sex as me. That's not cool.
I respect that. No, I respect that. That's you just keeping it real, being like, hey man, like this is me.
I don't fuck with that. I don't fuck with that. I don't fuck with people who fuck with trans people in a negative sense. I don't like people are trying. It's hard enough trying to figure out how to live my life as a disabled man wearing braces every day. Why am I gonna have to deal with somebody who makes fun of somebody who wears, who feels comfortable being who they are in their own skin or lack thereof? You know what I mean? Like that's not. I don't play that game. And I think people need to stop playing that game. We need to stop playing that game.
What about you?
Go ahead. Say it again.
No, sorry, my bad. I think there's a bit of a delay. I was asking if Hazy's there and he wants to chime in too.
Yeah, go ahead, Hazy. My bad.
No, you good.
Is Hazy there? Did we lose?
Yeah, I'm still here. Don't worry, I didn't die. I didn't become a host.
I was like, man, where's my boy at Hazy? I'm
you got real quiet back there, doggy.
Yeah, I was listening to Slater. I was locked in. I was like, oh shit, where's Hazy? I felt bad.
Yeah.
The man was on a run. I was letting him speak his mind. That's what I was.
Yeah, he was cooking.
I don't subscribe to. I've been made fun of for being different. So for me to turn around and shit on people for being different and wanting to just live, that's not where I go. If God has an issue with anything, let him deal with it. I think if that's what you believe in, that's what you believe in. Leave me out of it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna do what I was told, and I was told to take care of people, my students, my people, my music, straight like that. And I'm last. So that's how I get down. I do things in a way where I try to make you laugh first, and then we'll go from there. I do things where I'll make sure you're good first, and then we go from there. You know what I mean? I don't need to know where you and how you identify is what you need. If that's what you need for your respect, for you to feel validated, then you get your validation from me. I'm not gonna be, I don't recognize you like that. Nah, bro, because I may not see you tomorrow. and today is when you need me right now. So if that's what you need, then that's what you need. I'm not here to be some asshole to you. You know what I mean? I don't play that game because I know what it's like to feel isolated. I know what it's like to feel alone. I know what it's like to not have people listen. So I'm listening. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To bring it back to the question that was being asked of me, I think it's unique in the sense that the environment that Black people grew up in was different from probably just given the society norms. Like, for example, the Italians had their mobs, the Italians had their gangs, the Italians told their children what it meant to be a man, and that was also a level of stoicism. There's different versions of stoicism, but I believe that at some point or another, prior generations told a male child, to not cry, to not be weak. And at a certain amount of time, to many, that translated to not expressing yourself or not telling people what your problems were, to the point where it became unfamiliar to you to even describe what your problems were. It would be hard to conceptualize what even the issue is. Just particularly speaking about masculinity and black and just black society, I believe that for the most part, masculinity is not only a symbol of pride, but is a byproduct of society looking down on Black people, whether that be the rocks, the jazzes, things of that nature, and I think that also creates a level of animosity for society. And I'd say that speaks to everybody. It's not a monolith that I speak towards. Rather, I think that it's a idea of like having your music discussed on a greater scale. Like rock, sure, there's those rock bands obviously discussed as being chaotic or destroying the society. We all know about the Beatles and how they said things to the effect of, "Oh, well, people love us more than Jesus," or something to that nature, right? And how that led to a chaos of people trying to ban them and boycott them. And sure, they got the backlash, but there's a certain different underlying tone that sentiments take when you notice yourself as the other in some instances. So when someone talks about the gratuitous of violence and the depravity of hip hop or music that were predominantly created by a certain demographic within society, often by journalism, music, or audio, or just airways that don't look like you. It often does create that sort of dissonance, whereas to inspire the community in some misguided attempt, you try to invoke this level of stoicism to be proud within your own community, since something like same-sex relations, not an opinion I have, but often these things, and even we know this by mainstream media, that like prior to like modern day of the 2000s to 2010s and 20s, it was kind of like a weakness. It was kind of like they're feminine. So even villains are a bit more leering, a bit more feminine in the uses of mascara, long nails, things of that nature. So it seems easy to corroborate that there's an overlaying nature to it when we look at same-sex relations, since that we by default be considered very like feminine nature. There's that overlap. Like that's always the question, or at least that's the implicit idea, that there's some sort of gay connotation to the character or feminine nature to the character.
Is that why? I know this is gonna sound weird, but like people like like we said in our last podcast, like Sonic Fox, for example, you got this nerdy, skinny-looking black kid, and then he gets like a lot more hate from his own community than like by other people, just because it's like, well, you're not fitting the image, you're not fitting the mold. Like you don't listen to rap music, you don't, do these things like that. When he's like, yeah, I'm doing my own thing like that. If I like nerdy shit like anime or whatever, I'm gonna do it. And I find that weird how he gets so much hate for that. You know what I mean?
There's like going back to what he said too. Like there's always that like, and then you get those people that are like, hey, the music the music industry is taking away from our youth because they're pushing the gay agenda, the gay agenda. When I don't really agree with that. I think kids are expressing themselves more. You know what I mean? Like about open about who they want to be and how things are. And again, who as long as we are not harming anybody, why are we messing with them? You know what I mean? The worst thing that's happening right now is kids are being open about who they are. And it scares a lot of people. You know what I mean? It scares a lot of people. I think there's a what's the word? There's a huge shift. And going back to what he said, there's a huge shift in how we were hiding things and how people are tired of, if there's certain abuses in your household, people are speaking up about it now. People are saying like, "Hey, listen, this is who I am, and this is how I want to live my life." And you either down with it or you ain't down with it. Like, you know what I mean? And I think we can't keep playing these games with people in terms of saying, "Well, this is hurting the community." No, because you need people. A community is a community no matter who they are, gay, straight, whatever. Like, I think if you are secure in who you are, then there's no issues here. And I think a lot of men are, especially around in certain areas, especially now, who are pushing against that. A lot of people aren't secure in a lot of things, and it's not just sexuality; it's financials. There's a lot of stressors with depending on the situation and in any community. And I think the LGBT gets a lot of flack because they're out there with it. You know what I mean? They're out there with it with flags and parades and celebrations and lights and stuff and just saying that they're okay with who they are and I think the problem is that people just see sex. People see sex and just in lures of stuff. And think about it, even when you're on Twitter, right, Sola? Like when they start talking about like trans people and they do it in a negative site, it's like, oh, look at these guys, they're naked somewhere, and it's like this weird. It's always this weird negative connotation that you get without getting the full story of why certain things are happening. You know what I mean? So we need to delete these notions of negativity when it comes to those types of things, because people are going to be here regardless of the situation. And I think not that we have to force ourselves to be comfortable with it, but we need to be understanding that people are people. And if a gay person is having a heart attack, you have to help that person. If someone is sick, it shouldn't matter what their pronouns are. Just help this person. You know what I mean? We'll deal with the pronouns.
And honestly, speaking from like the other side, I guess, because people have that question a lot, like it's from their perspective, especially like older generation, like you already know, I'm in the South, so like people don't like change. They're comfortable with routine and pattern, stuff like that. And you have a lot of these older people to be like, very, keep it simple. If it ain't broke, why fix it type thing, like straight couples, whatever. And to them, I don't think a lot of them, that's one thing I feel like the LGBT community keeps getting wrong, is that they're trying to vilify, be like, all these people after me are, hella, hateful. They want me dead. A lot of these people, I don't think do. A lot of them are just confused and like scared and don't know how to handle it. It's like, I know it's hard to explain and put into words, but like talking to some of these people, some of them being family members, like older generation people, they like love people unconditionally. It just confuses them. They don't know why, type thing. Like,
it's, again, hurt people, right?
I know. Yeah.
When you look at when people are confused and they don't know how to handle it, they turn to anger and oh, why is this person wearing these bright colors? Why do you talk this way? Why do you whatever? I think it's a lot of fear too, because that gay person is more comfortable in their own skin than that person that's making fun of them. Same thing with me, right? I used to get a lot of shit for smiling in my town, or because in where I grew up in New York, people used to say I sound white. You know what I mean? Or I sound too happy about wherever I was from or wherever I was going. It's like, hey man, like I only have but so much time on this planet. Like, why am I not gonna be happy, bro? I've had 5 operations since I was 5 years old. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why am I not? You know what I mean? What's the problem with me being able to want to spread love and joy into this world? Like, I don't really understand where that comes from. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people, they weren't gifted that opportunity. You know what I mean? I was blessed enough to have a good mother who gave me a good personality. It was like, hey man, you gotta, no matter how bad people treat you, you gotta give them the love, and you gotta give them love. You gotta give them, you know, because some people are missing it. And that's why I have those mental health spaces on Twitter. That's why I have those things, because I want people to know that, you know, above all else, you are being listened to. You know what I mean? I may not be able to diagnose you or do any of those things, but you have a voice. And I think a lot of people who are on the LGBTQ plus community finally are using their voices, and the people that are frowning upon them are afraid to use their voice, whether it's in a positivity or not. You know what I mean? I think a lot of that pent up stuff is real prevalent. And not just any community, male, female, gay, straight, black, white, doesn't matter. We have a lot of, you know, I wish I could have told my high school sweetheart that I loved her, but I kept it in, and look where it got me. You know what I mean? Like, you know, got no kids, none of that stuff. So it's like, it's a lot of pent up things we want to say, we don't get to say, or we're too afraid to say. You know what I mean? And I think there's a lot of resentment with that.
Yeah. Hey, what you think, Hazy?
I wanted to bring it back just a little bit, because in terms of the resentment that the LGBTQ community gets, and the Black community in particular, I think that there is a bravado that has always been proliferated within hip-hop music, but that's just also a part of the struggle of society and growing up in that sort of environment, as well as the historical issues that being
200%.
On the back foot of dealing with those issues, and to deal with that hindrance, and to deal with that generational effects of that in poverty that you would live in, and also being taught to or being scrutinized as though that sort of thing doesn't exist, probably does create more of an incommunal way of discussing these subject matters, or want to look inward to like never be broached or being able to be approached by other communities that haven't had similar situations. Which is not to say that advice from external communities is invaluable, because of course it is, but I believe that that's where that initially started from. And so throughout generations, they prioritize stoicism, masculinity, being tough, and corroborating these ideas of femininity as being weakness. Therefore, same-sex sexuality is a sign of weakness. In the same vein as that, because even psychologically speaking, I spoke to this prior, but I believe that even TV shows, most villains, if you look about them, whether that be in mass media or in cartoons, they were kind of feminine, at least in terms of the male characters, to some degree. So
the Joker was feminine.
The Joker
He's flamboyant. Let's say he's flamboyant.
He's flamboyant.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say he was feminine.
Yeah, he's a backwards mechanic. He's a bit of a Fruit Loop, if you know what I mean.
I don't know.
That is like Mamba used magic and sorcery, coward's way of fighting. you have Leonidas in 3000. The guy's way of persuasion is clearly not the straightest, but he's leering, he's gaudy, he's wearing makeup, things of that nature. I think these are
Okay,
just
don't go for
romantic
my boy
elements.
Leonidas now. That man he's jacked as
No,
hell.
no,
Wait,
I
what?
I'm
respect
talking
Wait,
about
what
it.
are we
the
talking?
villain.
What show are we talking about here?
I'm talking
You
about
know,
300, the villain in 300.
oh, the
Behind
villain
those
Cersei's. Yeah, Cersei's.
Cersei's is glaring. He's wearing jewelry. He's makeup. He's very decadent. His ways of persuading people are clearly not the most straightest. So there's always those sort of undertones of like same sexual nature and same sexual
You're
relations
talking about
being
300, the movie from like Caesar's time?
Yeah, do you remember? Do you know the meme like where it's that dude saying "I am a generous god"? Have you seen that meme before?
I think I don't think, but I think, but again, yeah, no, I haven't seen that, but I think that's a different. I mean, that's definitely true, but that's definitely true. I do believe in that in the sense of like, again, a lot of those men had to hide their sexualities too, going to because didn't they say Caesar was very feminine at one point?
the whole point of this was
Yo, Caesar fucked femboys. That's a whole different
yeah.
conversation. That's a whole different game.
The
Interesting.
problem is that like I think in terms of black community, like the black community, is that stoicism replaced a avenue in which you could speak about these problems candidly. I think that's always been a problem with men's mental health in general, but in particularly in black families, I think the immediacy to be on your P's and Q's was far more harsher without an ability to express self-doubt. I think that for most children, that self-doubt couldn't be expressed to other people because you had to have pride about yourself. But also pride can be a folly as well, in the way that you don't express your inabilities or shortcomings, and you can improve on these shortcomings.
Pride was also the detriment to the family too. When you like in it like because think about it, you didn't want to come out as gay to certain people's in certain families because it would bring shame to that family in certain family members' eyes. So I agree with that. Continue. I'm sorry, not to cut you off.
Yeah, exactly. And that idea of not being forthcoming with those ideas often led to a lack of communication. And I think that even like for example, I think a lot of people probably are unfamiliar with people I just in the black community alone, and this could be external to the black community, but I think it's a foreign idea to most part for your father to ever complain. Like he'll complain about shit being fucked up, but he'll never express about how it affects him emotionally in that sense.
My father was one of the, and I love my father to death. God rest his soul. Like he would complain to me. He would yell, and his way of complaining was complaining to me, or whatever, or saying whatever's bothering him at that time. But I don't think but even in his mind, if you complain too much, you had to buckle up after a while. You couldn't keep doing it because you had to keep going. I think if we had more of a stable understanding of mental health and how to handle your emotions, especially in the black community, right? Knowing that you grow up in poverty, impoverished areas and stuff like that, and being able to have that outlet to say what you needed to say without having to feel judged, without having to feel like you were going to get backlash from it. I think it would do people a lot of good. I think we don't pay attention to how what we say or what we don't say can affect someone, or how we don't express what needs to be expressed can affect people. My father was one of those people too, man. I'll go as far as to say that he may disagree. If he was here right now, he'd probably disagree. But I could see it the way even him, like he grew up in the 70s and 80s, right? So like for him, I mean, he was a teenager in the 60s and 70s. So for him, you couldn't say certain things. You couldn't see two girls holding hands without him, without people saying certain things or that type of, because that wasn't that time period, and on top of living in New York City, on top of the financial issues, on top of Reagan being the president and dropping crack on the black community, like there's a whole host of things that can affect a person, on top of saying, we don't talk about our problems here. We don't do that here. We just keep going. The more you talk about your problems, the more you bring problems to yourself. So you couple all of that and you stir it up, and you get people who are very stoic about letting things go or letting things out. You know what I mean? Which can be detrimental to your physical health, But yeah.
Absolutely, and I would go as far as to say that with that community, naturally, even with immigrants to some degree, people who come here of their own accord, there's a plan in mind for what they're supposed to be doing and what they have to do. So naturally, there's an inherent community that you can go to, like Indonesia, like Koreans, Asians, Chinese, Japanese. They all have like this sort of inner working community. While there may be strands of different black people that have come from the islands, that came from slavery, and some people who moved here, there's not exactly a go-to community that they could source themselves to.
Yeah.
So not only are you in a community or a society where you are a minority, but still not communicated properly as a community of its whole thing, of a whole being. So this often means that to even have a community, it results in sometimes extraditing any other that could be indifferent, that could be different. So to me, I think that a lot of the black community problems are very complex. Even what I explain here is pretty is detailed to an certain extent, but I believe that it also leads to there never being like a unifying voice. Like when people moved here, they were able to create communities, they were able to create environments because there was an idea, there was a plan being sent somewhere, and a bunch of people with no plan, no economic dreams, or not even like a good inkling as to where the origin is from, definitely has some detriment, especially if you're not coming here as the finest of a generation. Like for example, we have people who come from Haiti who have exceptionally high graduation ratios. These are people who are coming here with a plan and understood where they're from, and they were academically sound. But people who initially came here to America didn't have any of that. On top of the reservations that black people had, black people had from country, from communities, from legislation. And so for most people don't understand that the abundance of humans that exist on the earth is large and abundant. So when the telltale signs of somebody being gay exists, they don't take into account someone's happiness, someone living life to fulfillment, any of those ideas. It just immediately goes into I don't understand. And I think the difference between I don't understand and I disagree, because it's taboo to say you disagree to some regard. So some people hide behind the notion of I don't understand. You'll probably see an older elder talking about like, oh, this new generation, and it happens with every new generation. People believe
it
that
happened with us too.
Something
It happened with us.
Yeah, no. As I said, every generation. I didn't exempt myself. I didn't exempt
No.
myself.
Yeah.
I'm saying every generation has this moment of it's a simulacrum, and in fact, there's an idea that you're speaking to some holistically new idea, like your generation don't understand, but every generation at some point had did that to them to say, you don't understand, there's a disconnect, there's a cognitive dissonance, when in actuality, to really create community, you want to create that connection, you want to understand, you want to feel as though they can come to you with these problems. With knowledge, often enough, there becomes a level of indignant nature that comes with the younger generation. And with the young generation, they are unbridled, they have the water as the oyster, they have youth, and so naturally there's a unwillingness and an incredulousness to them being taught anything. But the level of humility, I believe, on either side of the discussion, it can be mutual understanding. Like, for example, some things my parents did weren't that great. Like, my parents don't exactly understand all the LGBTQ stuff. However, when I asked him, I said, do you not understand or do you not want to understand? And he said, I don't want to understand. I said, we can start there. Because we're having a more honest conversation about what we're talking about. Because you're a relatively smart person. It's not that you don't understand, you don't want to understand. Because not understanding, not agreeing leads to ostracization. But agreeing and disagreeing is not what you create understanding. It's not where you create any mutual way of standing on top of an idea. So that's why I think it's so interesting that my parents allowed me to learn, be free to learn my own religion, to pick my own religion, to study. These are things that let me be more open-minded, and I was able to talk to them. Then I had cousins who would be told that in the most sensitive time period in their life that they're an idiot, they're not going to be nothing. You don't know, you might think that's tough love, but that child in a crucial moment in time is probably never going to bring this up to you anymore because they never want to feel stupid again, regardless of how you think about it. And I think that happens a lot in the Black community. I see so many members on my Facebook who bring up tough love, but often enough, sometimes tough love just makes you lack any voice or ability.
Tough love makes you quieter.
Yes, it actually makes you quiet. It makes you obedient, which is what parents want, but it makes you less communicative. And so, as the next generation drifts away to some regard, and have this fundamental disagreement, no one's communicating more due to past traumas of how they were silenced in the past, or how they were discouraged from ever speaking about these things. So I think that's like the problem currently in the Black community, that there's an unwillingness to show humility and to give humility in terms of conversations and creating an understanding. And similarly to the animosity for the gay community, I believe that Black people believe that it's particularly a unique thing that is being shown in abundance within the Black community, which I don't agree with. I think it's actually kind of promoted by a lot of your Omars, like your Umars, Dr. Umars, that this is uniquely something that is to destroy the Black community.
I can't believe you brought his name up.
I know, I vote Lord Voldemort. My apologies, but I just think that
Dr. James Umar.
I don't know who he is.
Just keep going, man.
Is he that bad? All right, my bad. I just never heard the name before. I was just a bit, that caught me off guard. You were like, "Oh hell no!" And I was like, "Huh, who's this dude?"
Man, I don't want to talk ill of anybody, man. But like it's very hard for me because you have people who say they want something good for the community, but then they undermine with certain things that they say. You know what I mean? And that bothers me. Because you got people that listen to this. You got people who listen to Mr. Umar, and he's very insightful in the things that he says, and he comes with facts, but the way he portrays these facts as opposed to the things that he does behind closed doors is very crazy to me. I don't know. It bothers me because the media always makes the Black community look like we need somebody to lead for us, and we don't.
Complex
like they always say, instead of saying they'll say Black leader Reverend Jesse Jackson or Black leader before they call him Reverend. Like, you know what I mean? It's like I've never seen a Caucasian leader in the white community. I've never heard of that because they don't have to go through the stuff that we have to go through. You know what I mean? There's never been somebody to quote unquote speak.
With like a good sense of community. I think usually leaders are in abundance within the Black community because there's a stronger sense of community. Like there's not a necessity for there to be leaders.
There's a lot of people that can't. There's a lot of people that can't stand
Reverend Jesse Jackson. I mean,
yeah.
There's a lot of,
agree.
you know what I mean? I think a lot of people don't really ask. Like they look at like somebody I can't stand too is and I know Soul is gonna kill me for this. I'm not a Thomas Sowell fan. Like, you gotta go. Like, he doesn't speak for the entire group of Black people. And for me, I look at it from I'm a people person first. And just throwing facts in people's faces is not how you're gonna do it. You know what I mean? I think you get more bees with honey than you get with water. Is that the saying? I think like Dr. James Umar, he's got sort of the right idea, but his approach is crazy. And I think you need a little bit of both.
All right.
I think Thomas Solis is pretty. I think he has the right beat on some of his ideas, and especially being an economist, really tune people into some certain ideas they should be mindful of in terms of like self-improvement and doing that sort of thing. But in terms of like just the this Black community in general, I think that's often the idea that like people get stuck on. We spoke about this too to a larger extent, but I think that like a silencing of like children and not being able to speak up against parents.
And
that's immediacy towards.
I know I'm going off on tangents, but it's like that's a product of why kids don't talk. You know what I mean? And I think even when I was a kid, the way my father spoke to me about certain things, whether it be communicative about girls or communicative about my school and how I do certain things in school, it made me not want to tell him certain things because his reactions are something that I'm not looking for. Even my mother's reactions, my mother was supposed to be the nurturer. Like, there's certain things certain things that my friends have told their parents, I would never tell my mother. Not because I don't love her. I don't think that she's the type of person I would say certain things, because I know how she takes information, and she doesn't give it to me in a way that will empower both of us in a situation. You know what I mean? It'll just be like, I don't know. It would be in a way where it's like, why'd I even bring it up? You know what I mean? Like,
I think a good movie. The movie name, just to put a nice bow in this, the movie's name eludes me right now, but Denzel Washington was in this movie where he's raising a child, and the child.
Is it the one where he was telling the kid, like, I don't have to like you?
Yeah. He's like, why don't you like me, man?
Yeah.
It's like you.
I don't have to like you. I take care of. Yeah, but that's a very poignant movie, and that's a very poignant scene in that movie, and that's the way a lot of people see their parents. And it's funny you bring that up, because I was talking to a friend of mine who's from Serbia in Twitter Spaces, and he said the same thing. He said Americans are so worried about feelings, and they're so worried about what people care about certain things. It's like, no, you don't. Who gives a shit about your feelings? But feelings are that's what makes you a human being. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's
called Fences, by the way. Fences.
Huh? Fences.
The movie's name is Fences.
Yeah. Feelings are what make you a human being. Without not everybody's a robot. You know what I mean? Like, I am a person who knows what it feels like to not have anything, or to not have anyone around, or not to feel like no one is listening to me. That's the first thing that's the first sense that you have, is your touch. What do you feel? What do you like? You know what I mean? Like, that's before anything else. So I don't subscribe to the notion that you have to be quiet, or you have to, because your expressions and your feelings make you who you are as a person. If you're going to be this stoic animal,
your relationships with other people are pretty shitty. Like, they're pretty shitty, regardless of how you put it. You know what I mean? Now, there's a lot of holes. There's a lot of holes in my cheese, you know. But the one thing I've always prided myself on is my communication. Is being, hey, if I did something wrong, tell me. Put me in a position where we can have an honest conversation about what I did wrong, or if I hurt anybody in any type of way, and we can have that conversation. If you come at me like you yelling at me, I'm not answering that. But like, if we're having an honest dialogue, then that's cool. And I think a lot of Black families, especially when I was growing up, it wasn't like that. It was more about yelling and screaming and who can yell the loudest. And I think kids are growing up in that era. Kids are growing up in that and being like, yo, I don't want to deal with that. That's why you hear a lot of kids saying, I don't want to go to family reunions, because not only am I getting molested or whatever, I'm also getting verbally assaulted. I'm getting, feelings are a lot. You know what I mean? It's a lot. People don't want to admit to it, but it's a lot. It's a part of who you are. You know, and in order to get those feelings out, you are going to explode on someone. It may not be today. It may not be tomorrow. It may not be 7 years from now. But you're going to attack somebody. And what's the first thing I'll say? Well, where did that person come from? How come nobody taught that person how to handle his anger? They can't handle your anger because you told me to shut up for the last 7 years. You understand what I'm saying? Like, and we they love looking at the Black community like that, especially when a young Black man goes to jail for something. You know what I mean? Well, who raised you? How come you don't have, they calling you animals underneath their breath and stuff, So it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I think we need to address that.
Hey, Slater, man, I appreciate you being on. This has been a phenomenal podcast, man. Like,
hey, brother,
it's been honestly, yeah, like, I'll be real with you. I know before people say we have beefs and stuff like that, but nah, like, you real one. Like, always appreciate you still being in my corner and stuff.
Absolutely, man. You know it, man. I'm here. I don't fuck with people just to fuck with them. I fuck with them because I care about people and I want people to be cool, man.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for inviting me on this pod. Hey,
you got any advice real quick, like a closing statement for you that you would give to the audience or to people listening?
Hey, man, just don't talk about it, be about it, man. Leave the world better than the way you found it. And it's not always, it doesn't end with you. It starts with you.
Good shit. Good shit. Hey, Slater, one more thing before you go. So I ended up hiring me a private detective. We were able to, go through some old tweets. You'd be okay if I asked you a question or two on some of them to get your opinion?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I was just wondering. So you tweeted here that fuck Jamal Murray and fuck Aaron Gordon, but most importantly, fuck the Joker. Bitch needs to know how to play defense and get off the Nuggets. LeBron.
Okay.
What do you mean when you say that tweet, brother? What were you thinking about, when you tweeted that?
Sir, I'm going to need you to refrain from lying. Thank you, sir.
No, trust me. This is a reliable source here. I got the best of the best to look this up.
I have been the biggest Nuggets since 1990, my guy. Okay. Since 1990. Listen, I'm gonna tell you. Listen, and I'm gonna get canceled for this. I can guarantee you. I have an eclectic group of sports teams that I choose, that I love. I'm born in New York, but I have no New York teams that I cheer for. I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan in the NL. I'm a Red Sox fan in the AL. I'm a Nuggets fan in basketball. This is my first championship.
Congratulations on that, by the way. First championship.
Thank you. When they win, we all win. I'm a Vancouver Canuck in hockey. Listen, I'm a Black man who loves hockey, man. So don't play with me. Hey, yeah, man. I've been blessed with.
How would you dislike Carmelo Anthony? What's that about?
Huh?
Yeah. What is that about? That's a good point, Hazy.
Nuggets. I heard you.
Oh no. We don't talk about fuck
Anthony.
Carmelo. No. Okay, I will say this. I will say this on your podcast. I will say this on your podcast, minus everything I said about being nice to people and all that shit. Fuck Carmelo Anthony. I'm the Carmelo Anthony love is killing me. Yes, he got us to the finals. Yes, he got us to he got us to the conference finals. But did he get us anywhere? No, he didn't. No. Okay, him and his wife can go somewhere. All right, New York fans. Oh, you gotta get without Carmelo, you couldn't get Jokic. Whatever, man. Dude, go hang up his jersey someplace else. He was a diva. He always wanted to be a diva. That's why he wanted to go to New York. Now he's talking about he's happy that Denver got a championship. Get out of here, man. Okay. You know what I mean? It's the wishy-washy stuff for me. That's what it's about. It's the wishy-washy stuff.
I got another one from my definitely secret, totally anonymous private detective who did some research for me.
You mean the lying store? What do
you mean? This is a very credible citation sourced person. So we got a tweet here that said, they call me a motherfucker while I'm fucking their moms. Where the snow bunnies at? So you want to elaborate more on like what you mean by that? Like I'm just curious. Like
I don't know who wrote that one. I don't know who wrote that one, but that damn sure ain't me. So I don't know. Now I have had interracial relationships in my time, but I'm not the type. As a teacher myself, I cannot be roaming around talking about where the snow bunny's at. That's a little wild. That's a little wild.
Oh no.
That's a little wild.
I'm just put my notes in here. I'm in denial.
I got another one here.
Okay, I got you. I just had to write those notes down really quick. Yeah. What's this one right here? Yeah, last one. Okay, I have this Steve Urkel motherfucking looking ass in my class. Tell me why his molars are his front teeth. I'm about to bust him down. So you want to I
think that one is me talking about myself, because that's how I dressed when I was a kid. So hey man,
do you think there's some psychology and like projection like on their students?
Listen, even though I'm a teacher's aide, I am one of the biggest nerds on the planet, bro. Dialect, I think you will enjoy this about me. When I'm in my hallway or I'm in the classroom, whatever, I want my students to relate to me. So I don't wear the traditional teacher clothes. I wear jerseys, I wear t-shirts. I don't even let the kids call me by my last name, because I'm a human being first. You know what I mean? I'm a human first, and I don't let my authoritarian part of me take over the job, because at the end of the day, I am who I am, and I want the kids to see that I bleed the same color as them. Adults are just bigger kids. People don't really understand that. You know what I mean? I think we use kids as this outlier. Oh, these kids just don't understand. These kids just don't get it. Blah blah blah. But we were just like them. We've been sitting here for 2 hours talking about our childhoods, and our parents had the same childhood that we had. You understand what I'm saying? So like,
it's true.
When I go to work, I want my students to know that I'm the same person. So I don't do the Mr. Slater thing. I don't do any of that. I dress the way I wanna, within reason. I talk to kids the way I work the way I would want somebody to talk to me if I needed help. And that's how I live my life. So yeah.
Hey, I appreciate you having on. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Slater pulling up to radio.
Here, please, guys, please check out my first. I've been working on a lot of new music. There's gonna be a lot of new music coming out soon. I've been working with I got my first album out. It's on iTunes and all the places where you can find it. All the good stuff. Hip hop group called Deep State. The name of the album is called Lead by Example. There's more production coming from me soon. Also, I'm working on a hip hop production album that's got Reggie Miller on it. Reggie Miller is one of my favorite players in the NBA.
So the album's gonna be based around him. Also, one more thing, I got my own podcast where we talk about all type of opinions with my big homie Chance Legend. It's called We Have Opinions, the podcast with Chance and Slater. I talk about everything from interracial dating to what the rent is like in Gotham City to dating single moms to why we have hunger in this country. So, and we do it in a funny way. Some days we do it in a serious way, but it's all fun at the end of the day. So,
hey, last thing really quick, Goku or Superman?
Huh?
Who do you think's winning that fight, Goku or Superman?
Yo, can I be honest with you? As a black man, I have never watched an episode of.
Oh hell no! Don't say it, bro. No, don't say it. You never watched Dragon Ball?
No.
We need to get you on that, man. We need
never. Yeah, you gotta get me
on that.
Never. Like, listen, I'm literally staring at it. I'm literally staring at my computer screen, and I'm about to watch Demon Slayer right now. I've been watching a lot of anime the last couple of years. Like I said, Inuyasha's been one of my favorites. Death Note, Game Got Kill.
Have you seen Vinland Saga yet?
Not yet.
Peak.
What's the one with the giants? Attack on Titan. Yeah, man. I'm getting there. Man. I'm listen. I'm one of those old people that listens to the young kids, man. So, the kids tell me what animes to watch. I watch them, and then we compare, and this way I create. I try to create a communicative environment on a human level. You know what I mean? Because that's what we need. Because it's all about community. But
oh yeah,
all right, man.
Well, hey, again, thank you for tuning in for Requiem Radio, everybody. Thanks for stopping by. Hazy, appreciate you for helping me out, man. And once again, huge shout out to Slater. Thank you for joining us and being our first guest. But
absolutely, man. Anytime. I'll be back here soon.
Will do. Hazy, you got any last saying words?
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to put succinctly as I wanted to talk about the underpinnings of Black struggles, but I believe that this was a productive conversation nevertheless.
Oh, yeah.
It has been an excellent contributor to the podcast, and hopefully we have you back on some other time soon enough.
Definitely.
Project, potentially within the next episode, but until then, you've seen this in HD. I'm Hazy Alex, and this is Requiem Radio.
Ooh, that's smooth. Yeah, Slater, you're more than welcome back in, man. You're the best. I want you to know that. But
thank you, man. Anytime, man.
Appreciate the conversation, and with that, we are offline.